So I'll call the meeting to order. Let the roll call reflect that all council members except for Vice Mayor Candell are present. That brings us to adoption of the agenda.
I move to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all in favor with one absent. We come to public comment. Opportunity to speak on an item that is not on our agenda.
Government this bad?
No, I have 3 minutes for each of you.
That's okay.
Okay, no public comment. Okay, with that, we will move to Paul Kimura, who is the principal from William Avery and Associates, who is conducting our hunt for a city manager. And let me just kind of preface the whole thing. At our last meeting, there was a discussion about where we were in the process. So I see this as an opportunity for you to bring us up to speed on where we are. And also what the expected timing is in terms of our getting to closure on this process and what the process looks like going to the last few steps. So that's really, I think, what we're looking for. And then if there are options that we can consider in terms of tweaking the process, that's something else we want to discuss with you. But I just felt that the best way to get things answered was to have you here. Sure. And we could talk to you directly. Mm-hmm. And I know that Cam's going to be out on the next meeting, and so there's timing for calendars is another part of this. But I'm glad you're here tonight, Paul, so if you would like to give us an idea of where we are,
Absolutely.
That would be great.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and meet with all of you and bring you up to speed because we have made, I think, excellent progress on the recruitment to date. And as you know, we've been in what is called the filing period, where we're seeking out applicants and getting them to apply for the position. That filing period formally closed yesterday. Okay. And so so that's one of the critical steps in the process, is to get that one done. And of course, that was preceded by a lot of community outreach. We had a list of some folks, 14 specifically, to reach out to and talk to further. We've talked to 13 of those 14. We've had a difficult time connecting with one, but we've done that. We had a community meeting here at the library, and we have been running a survey on your city's website. So right now, as of today, the survey has had 67 responses. Okay, so it's a fair turnout there, not as high as I would have anticipated, given what we were led to expect, but still, a good turnout as far as numbers. The good news is, from the recruitment, the outreach standpoint, our current applicant count is 35. Okay, so during the last week, we picked up a good number, and that's what the group that has applied for the position. We have done some preliminary reviews, initial discussions with some of the candidates. We're at a point where we're going to move forward and formally interview, at this point, at least 10 and possibly 12. Okay, we think, based on our knowledge of them, based on the resume, based on some of the interactions that we've had in the past, that they certainly come to the top as far as the group. Once we do our video interview with the candidate, I'll be handling that. I'll be making decisions as to whom I feel meets the position specs that you've articulated most closely, and we'll do some follow-up initial referencing that we'll do on the candidates, as well as I will be developing an assessment, if you will, of the interview that was conducted. And we'll package that together in what we call a candidate profile. And then when we come back to meet with you to present our recommendations, that'll be the nature of each of the candidates whom we are recommending. They'll all, each have a candidate profile. I would anticipate anywhere from 4 or 5 to maybe 6 or 7 that I would recommend that you take a further look at. But you'll see information about, frankly, the 10 or 12 that I end up interviewing, as well as a list of names and titles of where they're currently at of the remainder of the applicant pool. And that's all what we discussed during the candidate presentation, which was initially on the timeline scheduled for your council meeting of the 24th of this month. Okay, that's typically done in closed session, okay, as are the follow-up interviews with the council. And the reason why we emphasize the importance of that is the privacy of candidates is really important in these processes. The majority of the people I'll be talking to are currently employed in other agencies. And typically, we like to assure them at least some level of confidentiality going through the process so it doesn't expose them. In today's world, unfortunately, that can be a big negative issue for them if their current counsel finds out that they're interviewing. Okay. So moving forward, we need to have you ratify the final candidate pool, and then we need to decide what process you wish to undertake for the next step. And I apologize, Mike and Teresa, when you were on the subcommittee, we talked a little bit about the various steps, but I think it's a good time to just come back and revisit, because typically there are several ways in which we can move this forward. I always recommend to my clients that the long list of candidates, the 5 or 6 or 4 to 6, is a meeting that takes place between the council and the candidates, and that the council can identify the several perhaps that they work or can see themselves working most effectively with. Okay, so creating the short list. And then there was, beyond that, discussion of what happens beyond that. There are several different approaches that we can take depending on the council's desires. But, if it's important to have staff weigh in, we can set up follow-up discussions between staff and the short list of candidates. If there's a desire to have maybe a select group of community members participate, that can be arranged as well, but it should all be done, I think, in one process. They don't have to all interview together, but at least all during the same day, okay, so that we can ensure that we're not imposing on people's times and continue to kind of focus on moving forward. Their feedback to the council is very important, the collective feedback, and it's really on an advisory basis, because in the end, of course, it's the council's decision as to who they wish to appoint. So we can create a mechanism by which, if depending on what level of participation you wish, we can set up follow-up discussions between the council and the panelists to provide just feedback and input. And that has to be monitored and managed in a way where you're being provided as a council qualitative or inputs, but there's no decision-making ability by staff or the community to say, I want this person hired, or you can't hire this person. That's council's responsibility, and it's their purview. So that decision has to be made right by the council members. So those are kind of the steps that we take as far as process, and you will need to decide when you wish to move forward with that first list of candidates, because if you're talking to, say, 5 or 6, we're talking a full day. I mean, we're starting at 8:30 and we're not finishing till about 5 or 5:30, so it's a pretty long day. So we'll need to establish that date. Oftentimes, it's good to establish that in advance so that the candidates as well know to hold the date pending your approval of their candidacy for next stages of consideration. Okay, so that's how the process works from here. If we can plan out and map out our dates in advance, it'll be easier to accelerate the process, because in reality, it can become cumbersome, it can become long, and in the end, once the contract terms are agreed to by the candidate, you would need to approve that at a regularly scheduled meeting. So, depending on cycles, we don't plan this in a coordinated way. There's a chance we can lose a month to 2 months, as far as approving the contract and getting the candidate on board. Okay, so with that, any questions? I did bring a copy of that original timeline if you'd like to see it. And then I also brought, and I've been providing these to Tracy on a regular basis, the actual time, the status update. So I'll pass those
Thank you.
all to you. Okay.
That's great.
Okay.
Okay, so are there any initial questions that we'd like to ask Paul at this point? Councilmember Burks?
Yeah, just a couple. And thank you very much. I really appreciate the status and overview and all the work that you and your firm have done, and you being here tonight through a very long commute. Will we have it? I don't know if it's on the weekly updates, or is there a way that we can see what the community has provided you through the surveys and the outreach? And do you have a summary of that? Or can you tell us maybe some of the top 10, top 5 values that you've heard that from the public that they want to see in our city manager?
Yeah, the answer is yes. What I was planning to do is when I came back for the presentation of candidates,
Okay.
I was going to bring back feedback from survey results.
Okay.
I was thinking I might pull together something for tonight, but the format is right now really cumbersome. We're having a hard time changing it because it's the SurveyMonkey tool.
Okay.
And we don't have a lot of flexibility in terms of how we present the information, but it's all there. So I will bring updated survey feedback at that meeting. As well, we do have some notes from the community meeting, and then we have some generic or general notes from the follow-up phone discussions. There were a number of people who asked to speak with us anonymously, and so we are not making direct attributions of feedback to any one person. I think if I were to summarize just from an overview standpoint, there really seems to be kind of two different camps in terms of community thinking. One is valuing the importance of proper growth and improvement of quality of life issues like improving downtown, improving traffic flows, environmental construction if it takes place. So there's that side of the equation, and then there's the other side of the equation, which really prefers not to have any change, to maintain status quo and really not to see any level of development or improvement. And I think we kind of see those two opposite ends of feedback. And of course, smattering of everything in between, but clearly the community is very vocal, and they have their thoughts on what they'd like to see. Of course, the challenge for the council there is that it's hard to do both, right?
A little difficult.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the challenges that we face collectively moving forward, and who is the right candidate to take this job, because clearly, community building is going to be a part of this job.
Thanks. And I just have one more question, if it's okay.
Yeah.
Out of the 10 to 12, so you've got 17, you said? And you've narrowed that down to 10 to 12 that you're going to interview? Is that accurate?
35?
We've got a candidate pool of 35.
Of the 35, I'm
Right.
sorry. No, I got so
And
35.
we've narrowed it down to 10 to 12.
Okay. Out of the 10 to 12, can you say, are any of them from out of state?
Off the top of my head, 3 are out of state, 2 have California experience, and
Is it recent experience? Can you say?
fairly recent, right?
Is it Bay Area experience?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And then 1 is strictly out of state, but in a very high demand high participation environment.
Okay.
And so I wanted to just explore further
Okay.
with that candidate. I don't see that background as being ideal for this job, but the nature of the communities he's worked in are very high profile, very high demand, and so I wanted to spend the time with him just on the off chance that he might be he might be appropriate for you to consider.
And then out of the 10 to 12, if you can say, or if it's appropriate at this time, and if it's not, that's fine, if we're getting into the details too much. Out of the 10 to 12, how many are not working or located or living in the Bay Area? Other than the out-of-state
right.
folks?
There's the 3 that are out of state, and there are another 2 or 3 that are outside the region. Okay, so Southern California and or Central Valley. I think the good news is that of the 10 or 12, just again off the top of my head, I think 7 are existing city managers. And so they have a pretty rich city management background and experience. So, you know, that's certainly going to be one of the criteria that we'll look at.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Other questions? Yes.
When does the survey close?
Our expectation was to just kind of bring it down at the time we come back and meet with you, just prior to that.
That's the June 24th, you mean?
Right.
Okay.
And frankly, the level of participation has died off significantly.
So maybe another push, that's
Yeah.
the thought. You know, if we want to push, we can have another push. We have time for another push.
Right.
If we want.
Right.
As I was trying to get that question. And also, if we do get feedback from staff, do you have recommendations of which staff should be involved at, or is it just all staff?
Generally, when staff participates, it'll be at the executive level.
Okay.
So it'll be your department heads, folks that would report. And the way we structure it is we tend to try and make it more of a interactive discussion as opposed to a formal interview process.
Okay.
And then when they might meet with you, they would talk about what they saw in the candidates, what areas they felt the candidate offered some positive attributes and value, and then some areas of reservation, so that when you had your final opportunity to meet with the candidates again, you may want to explore those areas further.
Certainly. Okay, one more.
Yeah.
So if we get feedback from our community, which ones and how many should we include? Are those typically the people you already spoke with, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's, in the end, that's up to you
Okay.
as to who you wish to serve on that panel. The challenge with involving the community is, you know, you don't want to have an open forum where you just invite whoever wishes to come, and, you know, that can turn into a messy situation. So you have to kind of pre-identify a number of people. Generally speaking, more than 5 or 7 on a panel can be unwieldy. Okay, so that's why it's always a challenge to involve the community at that point, because, you know, even if it's 5, even if it's 10, there's always the, well, what about me? Why couldn't we do 15? Why couldn't we do 20? That part of the process is always difficult.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Garrett.
So thank you. Those were my questions on staff and community. So, but I did have a question. In your experience in the process, and where city councils have decided that they would have a community engagement with the short list of candidates, how has that experience gone? And a little more detail on, I get the 5 to 7, but how do you structure the format? Is that also a free, open dialogue? And if you could just talk a little bit more about your experience and your recommendation,
Sure.
I guess.
Excuse me. That process is structured in the sense that we would have some questions available to the community members, they can choose from that list of questions to ask, or if they have their own questions that they wish to ask. But we would want to discuss that in advance and kind of vet that to ensure, right, we're protecting the city's interest in terms of, say, legality and so forth. But it's important, I think, to have some level of structure, because otherwise the basis of comparison, the frame of reference between, say, the two or the three is not as easy to ascertain. So we would do that. We would certainly ask them to sign non-disclosure,
Yeah.
right? So that, and swear them to secrecy, so that we can protect the confidentiality of the candidates, all right? And beyond that, it's, you know, it has worked okay in the past. You know, it's interesting, I think interviewing or getting a feel for what a city manager offers or a candidate offers as your city manager, it's a challenge. It's, you know, there are certain ways in which I think an interview question should be structured to really determine what that candidate might offer in terms of their orientation, in terms of how they addressed issues, how they would react to, you know, some of the community situations that you're experiencing here in Lafayette. And so one of the things that I do in my process, I do a lot of behavioral interviewing, because I think I found that, you know, past behavior, how they've addressed certain situations that maybe are similar here, is a good indicator of how they might deal with those in the future. So I try and do that, and I also try and create those types of questions for the council as well to utilize. And so throughout that process, I think we do a fair amount of evaluation from that standpoint, and of course we'll want to do some final vetting. We'll do initial references when we present our initial recommendations, but once you kind of zero in on your top candidate, we'll want to do some additional references, and in some cases where possible to do what we call blind references, talking to people that we might know that know the candidate, but that they haven't given to us.
Okay.
That's a
Then, Councilmember Bliss?
Yeah, thank you. I have a question, picking up on the questions from Vice Mayor Kendall and Councilwoman Geringer about the idea of the panel and the community participation. You said a little bit about what you've seen in terms of ways of structuring. You talked a lot about sort of process, and I'm curious in terms of like the actual selection and composition, like of who would be on that sort of panel. You mentioned that one possibility would be maybe to go back to the dozen or so people that you'd reached out to already in terms of stakeholders in the community, but in terms of your experience and making sure that the people on that 5 to 7 person panel are broadly representative of the community, whether that's geographically or otherwise, what are ways that you've seen that working in terms of the process of assembling the who that would be on that panel?
Right. Generally, I've seen that be a real challenge in terms of identifying who should be.
Just generally.
Yeah. In almost every situation where that happens, that is a challenge, because you have to limit the number, you have to have some level of structure, and you have to have folks that are willing to adhere to and agree to, you know, the process that's been established. So, you know, if rebels or mavericks are, you know, just tend not to work out as well. So we do tend to hear, no matter how much a council tries to involve the community or how transparent they want to be, it's really difficult to please the broader community as far as whatever process you choose. And that's why I continually reinforce to whether it's the community members or staff that this is the council's appointment. This is why they have been elected by the residents of this city, is to make these kinds of difficult decisions on behalf of the city. And in the end, they, you know, they have to pay the either reap the benefits of their successful hire or pay the consequences of an unsuccessful hire. And so, throughout the process, I try and reinforce that with whomever might be participating, that, this is a key part of your role. It's the most important decision, one of the most important decisions that you'll make as a council, but that's what you've been entrusted to do by the community.
Good answer. Okay. Councilmember
Just a
Burris.
quick one on that. Out of all of the clients you've had, how many would you say you included a community panel, percentage-wise?
Right.
Or-
I would say along the lines of 10%.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, that's it.
The majority of the time, the council will subscribe to the notion that they were elected to make these kinds of difficult decisions. And as a result, they're going to do so. Now, I have seen a greater proportion of these processes where staff might be involved, because staff knows what the job is all about. They know the environment in which they're working. Okay, and they're going to have some observations about a leader that I think oftentimes are different, because they're in a day-to-day work relationship, with the manager. So we
And those
tend,
observations would funnel to you, and then you'd share them with us?
we could do it one of two ways. We can do that, or if we don't want to filter it, we can have the council or the staff members meet with the council.
Meet with the council.
And provide input to you. The important aspect of that process is that you as a council, you don't share your opinions or your thoughts about the candidate, but you simply ask questions and ask clarification from staff as to why they may have made a certain comment, or what their thoughts are and why. But I think it's really important not to disclose your sentiments, about the candidates, because you want to keep your options wide open, right? And at the end of the day, when you go into your final deliberations, you want to be able to kind of do so, in a way that your decision in the end is going to be what's most important.
Okay, other questions from the council? Any questions from the public?
I just had one comment. Is the survey going to stay? I didn't notice it on the weekly report last week. Will it remain on there sometime?
The survey will remain on your website until somewhere near the meeting of the 24th. We'll probably ask Tracy to take it down, say, the Thursday or Friday before, so we can put together a final report.
But it was on the weekly roundup.
We're gonna put it on the weekly roundup again. I have a
Good.
note for Jeff to do that
Yeah,
this
good.
week.
Okay.
And possibly, well, I'll have him do it every week up until the
Yeah.
first time they meet with the.
It might be appropriate just to say as part of that we're going to take the survey down on the Thursday prior to the 24th.
I'm not
Okay.
sure we have it on the website, do we? I think we've just been putting it out in the weekly roundup.
That's right.
Okay, any other questions from the public? Okay, so we'll bring it back, and I think one of the things I wanted to do in this meeting was to kind of firm up some of our dates, those that we can at this point firm up. And Paul, it sounds to me like you're very comfortable with the idea of coming back to us with the long list, 4 to 7 candidates, on June 24th. However, we will be missing one council member at that time. So I'm up for discussion on this, but I would prefer that all of us are involved in each of these meetings when we discuss the candidates. Because I don't think it makes any sense to have someone missing and then they have to be brought up to speed. We should all be there. So, well, that's not a problem. That seems the only way we get this done. So that would move us into July as opposed to June 24th. And this would be, as I take it, a closed session where we would get from you the long list of candidates.
Ratify or sanction a final list of candidates. You may decide that you wish to change a couple out, based on, say, reputation, based on maybe your knowledge of a specific individual. At that meeting, we would firm up the final group. Or you may choose to say, I come back with 6, and you may say, no, let's go with these 4. So it's whatever the council collectively decides how they'd like to decide to move forward.
And at that meeting, once again, it's closed session, we are not interviewing the candidates.
Correct.
We are simply looking at what you have determined in terms of your process and what you're suggesting as being the long list, I guess, this
Correct.
which could then be either ratified as is or modified to become a shorter list. That shorter list then goes into the actual interview process. Okay, just want to make sure we're all
Right.
thinking about the same thing.
Yeah.
So, are there concerns about a meeting in July in terms of people's availability?
I'm gone that first week.
You're gone.
Right, July 4th, the July 4th
But
week
July
I'm gone.
8th is the first
The
council
first
meeting.
council-
Exactly.
The first
I'm
council
here
meeting
for
will be
that.
July 8th.
Right.
So is that, do you know?
Oh, I'm here.
Oh, you're, okay,
Yeah.
good.
I am
Okay.
back after a very monumental event in the family, but no.
Okay, all right, well, I am
So
here too.
July 8th?
So July
July 8th.
Then
8th.
there you go. So that'd be, I'm just putting this down.
Yeah, so that's exactly what we
For
want to
the
do.
candidate presentation will be July 8th, and Paul
In closed
says you
session.
need about a 90-minute closed session.
That was yeah.
So hopefully we
Is
won't
that
have
gonna work for
anything
you?
else.
Excellent, okay. So I think we're agreed on that. So July 8th will be when we see the long list and you make a presentation to us in closed session. Now, does it make any sense for us to go any further in date setting at this point, or should we just kind of see what we come up with?
I think it
From that
makes,
process.
yeah, I would advise we set
Okay,
follow-up steps, dates.
okay. So our next meeting in July will be what?
But this would be a meeting where this would be the interviews, right? So that would
Right.
need to be a full day?
Up to a full day, yeah,
And you do that
depending on how many
just during the
candidates.
week or on the weekends?
Yeah, what works?
And
It can be whatever is convenient for you. A lot of councils will do it on a Saturday, just because it's.
Is that easier for the candidates as well? typically, or is
Oftentimes
that-
it is, absolutely.
I can see that.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, then would we want to try to do it the following week, would it be the week of the 15th?
Or that weekend. Do the 13th or 14th.
Well, yeah, if we can make, I mean, we can, if people
Oh.
turn around that quickly, that's the question.
That's a question, I don't
I
know.
might have to fly in and make
Well,
reservations.
But you'll
That's his-
have
that's-
these dates and you'll be able to,
But if there are people
pre-warn
you
them or
haven't
something.
chosen, you want to make them.
and that's why it's-
Pre-warn the
Okay,
10th.
okay, let's, one at a time.
Sorry,
One at a
sorry,
time. Okay.
we're so excited.
I like excitement, but we have to contain that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so Paul, what seems like a reasonable time frame if we have a July 8th meeting with you, closed session?
Mhm.
What is a reasonable turnaround for folks to then know they need to come in and actually spend some time?
Mhm. I would, excuse me, I would advise that you give the candidate, we select either the 19th or the 20th of July, Friday or Saturday, so that, if they have to make travel plans, make arrangements, and we'll also need to talk about the logistic of whether the city will pay their interview costs, their travel costs as well. And that's something we can decide that evening of presentation after we see how many from out of the area are being invited. Okay. But typically, with better than a week's notice, they can get the best fare as far as their travel.
Okay, so basically July 19th, 20th would be a good target date for that to occur.
The 19th would be good, because I'm on an airplane on the 20th to London.
Okay,
19th is a Friday.
19th is a Friday.
So do you mean the 20th and 21st, or do you mean the 19th is
The
a Friday?
19th or 20th is,
Okay. Is that correct? Is that what you're,
I mean,
yes.
if we
okay,
did,
so Friday or Saturday?
so if we.
Well, that would be the
Yeah, it's
soonest.
gone.
If neither of those dates work, we can look at the calendar.
We can slide out.
Right.
I'd just say my flight's at 7:40 PM on Saturday, the 20th, so I don't know if we can,
Well,
or I can.
See, I don't know if we really want to give ourselves much pressure in this, because I think the process is going to take whatever time it takes, depending on the number we have. And then we may want to spend some time talking about this thing. And maybe we have a little dinner or something and kind of work through this.
Yeah.
So I'd really like to give ourselves an open end to work with as much as possible. Now, once again, one of the things that's been a concern is how much time this is all taking, right? So I hate to keep moving it out, but I just think there's a great value in it if we all can participate and do it freely and not be, in a hurry, trying to get ready to go do something, right? So the next stop would be maybe the 26th, 27th of July.
So the 19th would work?
Well, I'm just concerned that the 19th is a Friday. It may not, we were talking about weekend, right? Would be best, because then you've got kind of open-ended.
It's up to you, yeah, if that's a big recommendation for you.
Right. It makes it easier for the candidate,
Okay.
but if they're interested in this job, which
Right.
they will be, they'll make it work for them. And Fridays generally are days where some cities are on a 980 or a
Okay.
10,
Okay. So
All right.
Fridays are
So
good.
1040, yeah, so
The
Fridays.
19th, the 19th, 19th.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry.
so it would be, how many hours do you think we're gonna spend on the 19th?
If we give ourselves an hour per candidate, say a half-hour orientation in the morning, lunch 45 minutes, and end of day debrief, say an hour, and we have 5 candidates.
Okay.
So we're talking about a good 7.5 hours.
Okay, so it's a full day.
Yeah.
All day,
Okay. So are people able to commit to that?
yes.
Yes.
Yep, July 19th, Friday, right.
We're talking the 19th, Friday. Okay,
I'll stick
so that's our target date.
Okay. And I will advise and let all the candidates know as I interview them that that's the day there to hold that until I meet with you.
Okay. Then, at that point, we've had our shortlist interviews, then we're gonna have the staff review and possibly the reps from the community. Would that be it wouldn't be the same day, would it, or would it?
If you chose to do both, yes, we try and set it up the same day. And as a matter of fact, it makes for a long day for the candidates, but one way we could structure it is meet with staff, meet with community, each group
Kind of rotate.
provides you feedback,
Right.
right? Provides you feedback after they're done, and then you go into your final discussion with them after that. So what we could do conceivably is in the morning, have the interviews take place and then over lunch perhaps we have the panels come back and debrief you, and then after lunch you have your final meeting with the candidates. And that format would be, I would recommend to you, be much different in that, let's take the coat and ties off, let's sit around the table, unstructured, let's talk.
Have a good
And,
give and
yeah,
take kind of-
really see, because at this point, you want to ensure that, there's this connection. And so we get away from the structured interview questions.
Okay. So that would be the day of the 19th, all of that wrapped together.
No,
no,
We're
sorry.
still
That would be
on
the follow-up.
thanks, I thought.
Follow-ups.
you would identify at the end of the day 19,
Got it?
you would identify
The
either 2 or
three.
3.
Correct. So
To come back.
the day then for that process to occur with the 2 and 3 is when?
It can be anywhere from the following week on out. I think if you can find the time to make that work, I would certainly advise you to do it in about a week and a half's time frame.
Okay, go ahead.
So why not just the next day? Do you think we can do that? Like if it's the 19th and then
Well,
the 20th, or you're not thinking, he
I-
leaves late on the 20th,
Well,
yeah?
I understand that, but that's what I was trying to get away from.
Okay,
I
you
don't
don't
want
want-
to have a lot of
perfect.
pressure.
No
This,
problem.
This is a big deal.
Just didn't know how long that was gonna take, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
And we would, because you're going to have the morning, you have to hear the feedback from the morning session. Yeah, you will be potentially going into the evening.
perfect.
So that would put us at either the 26th, 27th? Well, give me an idea what was your
I get back on the 20th, excuse me, on the evening of the 27th.
Okay. So how about August 2nd or 3rd?
Can I just say, if you're gonna have staff, I'm not sure that we can I mean, we could, but I don't know that you're gonna get a lot of staff
Okay,
participation.
the 2nd's a Friday.
No, Friday,
Yeah.
yeah, but you said the 3rd.
I'm just
throwing it
trying
out
to
there.
give a zone there so that we can try to get something worked out. Clearly, a weekday would be better for staff.
For staff, it
Right.
would, yeah.
So,
But maybe even the community, I don't know about the community.
I just have to get to that. So the week of July 29th through the 2nd, are you around?
I'm here.
Okay. Is everyone looking okay there?
I'm not here on the 29th.
Okay.
That Friday, the 2nd would work.
August the 2nd?
That's doable.
August the 2nd, August the 2nd, August the 2nd. Okay, so August the 2nd is our target for that. So that's the one-day staff review, community reps, and feedback to us.
Is that how, oh, I thought that was when we bring the 2 to 3 back, right?
That's the 2 to 3
Okay.
coming back. They're gonna talk with staff.
Okay.
They're gonna talk with reps from the community if we wanna do that, and then we get feedback on that. And then I assume then we would meet basically in closed session at some point after that, make our determination, and then we have to have a negotiation of the contract.
Right, so conceivably on the 2nd in the afternoon, after you've heard the feedback, we could take the time to revisit with each of the candidates.
Okay?
And then following that interview, we can debrief and, make the decisions of who you wish to move forward with. And then at that point, you can also authorize me to begin negotiations.
So that would happen that day, the day of August 2nd. That's the
Yes.
hope. We
Yes,
have
that
all
would be the hope, that there would be somebody that clearly comes to the top
Mhm.
and you're able to move forward.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So, I'm sorry, it's been a long day. So we're talking about 2 rounds of interviews.
Correct.
And that's the typical protocol that you usually run.
Yes,
What if we, in our first round, identify a candidate that is just superb, extraordinary, and we all feel like that candidate should be selected based on our day and the feedback from the lunch and everything, and make that decision.
right.
I mean, we're gonna have 2 interviews with those people that day, right? We're gonna talk to them in the morning and the afternoon?
No,
No.
Just the
that-
afternoon.
Just the afternoon,
Just
after
the
we get the
afternoon.
feedback
After we get the feedback from
the
panels.
Staff panel and community panel.
If we decide to do a community panel,
Exactly.
staff panel.
That's on the 2nd, right? Yeah.
I think that time is valuable. I understand that. But in one structured interview process, sometimes you may not see everything you want to see or find out everything you may want to find out about a candidate. So I think the second meeting you have, the informal one where you kind of get to know each other a little bit better, that becomes either the validation or say the disqualification.
Disqualification.
Yeah.
Right.
So my view, sorry.
Here, go ahead. I know Teresa has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, I was just gonna say, my views on this, I mean, I kind of prompted this the last meeting, and I apologize, my travel schedule is now pushing this back so far, but I understand the methodology that you're explaining, but I mean, our city needs a CEO. And we can cherry pick this to death. I mean, we've all interviewed people in our prospective jobs. We're all leaders and managers in our jobs. I would like to see an option open if we have a candidate on that first day that we're just all agreeable on, that we move forward. And that saves us some time, and I just would like to see it as an option, I guess.
Okay, well, so from what I understand, we've got our closed session on July 8th. That's our first kind of report out from you. Then we ratify the pool. We're gonna have interviews on July 19th. And what you're suggesting is it might be that on July 19th, we know who we want. So then the question is, then do you want to have anyone else review these people, or would you go skip past staff and go directly to a negotiation process?
I think that should be an option.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think we should lock ourselves, my opinion is, I don't think we should lock ourselves into a process concrete wise. And I value the staff piece of this. I sometimes question whether or not having, potential subordinates coming back and speaking with their potential boss and then providing feedback to the hiring group, that is something I'm on the fence about, and I have been for a long time. And I know that's a trend now, more than it has been in the past, but my thing is we should just keep our options open.
Okay, well, I guess if we plan for the longest process, we can always cut that process
Sure.
if we decide we want to do
Sure.
that. So we've done that now. We have the dates for the longer process. Personally, I think there's a value in having the staff review.
No,
So I understand you're not quite the same place I am on that, but I think it's good. And so I would hope that no matter what we do, we still give staff an opportunity to give us some feedback. That would be just my comment on what you said. So,
Okay.
so from what I've got July 8th, July 19th, August 2nd. Right? And that's the long path.
That's the long game.
That's the long path.
And if I may add to the discussion about the second interview,
Yes.
one of the advantages, potential advantages of that is, while you may have a preferred candidate, right? I'm always looking at the standpoint of, you need a city manager, and what if something happens to that preferred candidate? Another offer, decides can't make it work. So we really want to evaluate if there's a second and a third that we want to have in our back pocket.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's another value of having that second process. Okay, well, do you think we have enough now to kind of go forward, or
Absolutely,
you're happy?
yes. More
Are we
importantly, are you
doing
happy?
something? I mean, I don't understand. What are you doing being happy?
No, I appreciate, the fact that, it's always important, I think, to have agreement as to how we're going to move this forward, and especially, in this city, right?
Mhm.
Where I think the perception can easily go sideways, right, from the community. So, I appreciate the opportunity just to have the discussion with you and help structure it in a way that will work.
Yeah. good.
And hopefully it leads to, a fantastic outcome, because in the end, that's what we want. And I know this has taken longer than we've wanted it to, but, I think along the way, there's been some real value in that, the community has been involved and engaged, and hopefully at the end of the day, they can feel that, their wishes were being heard.
Okay, that sounds good. Other comments, Councilor Gallagher?
I do have that. So, thank you. I'm glad that we have the process laid out and we have the flexibility. I'm a big fan of those second interviews and that more casual environment because of past experience. Just things can sometimes happen in those that do sway you in other similar public agency interview processes. What I would like to see us do is, this is great, and I think the timeline that some of us may have even forgotten that it was there, but in addition to pushing out the survey, I would like us to update this recruitment timeline or something like this to include that we expanded the process to beyond what your process or your 1 or 2 public engagement elements were, and that we added the community member phone interviews. They're not on here. It doesn't show that, we did the survey, and the survey, I think having what dates that it's been up there and having a link to it. So basically, I'm creating work, I think, for, if my colleagues agree, for Jeff and for staff, that we're giving an update on this is where we are. Here are the timelines that are going forward. Here are the closed sessions. Here are the opportunities you as community members have already had. And just to make it very transparent that this is the process, I think at some place along the way we'll keep saying that ultimately the city council has to make the decision, that this is something that we're taking very seriously. We have done all that we think we can do, and are considering doing more to engage the community while also protecting the confidentiality of that next great city manager that we're going to hire here in Lafayette. So I think we owe it to our constituents to get the word out about what the process is and what we're doing.
So that task really falls to staff.
Yeah.
Jeff, you're gonna kind of update all this stuff and make it available. Perfect. Okay, good. Other comments or thoughts? Yes.
So maybe my last one, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is tonight the night we should decide on whether or not we're going to have a community panel and whether or not we're gonna have staff, the staff piece of this? Or are we gonna do that in closed session, or are we gonna?
I think if we can make that decision now, that would be great, but I don't know if it's gonna make a difference in terms of your timing at this point.
I'm just saying, are we gonna have a chance to meet again in open session to?
Good question, good question, Ron, good question.
Part of the, if you're communicating the process, it'd probably be ideal to have the
That
process nailed down
Now.
now, if you're planning to communicate the process. Because if we decide to keep it flexible, we'll want to say that, because if we talk about having staff participation and community participation and decide after the first interviews, wow, slam dunk, let's go hire this person. I think there could be a credibility issue there.
Right.
Okay, well, it sounds like we might want to delve into this.
Okay.
So you want to start?
I'd be happy, I'll start on I'd be happy to, I feel also, I don't think I explained it very well. My feelings about the staff having engagement with candidates, and that I've been on the fence on that from kind of both of you. I believe that should happen,
Okay,
100%.
okay.
So I'll endorse that.
Okay, and then go from there, okay. So are people feeling okay with the idea that staff would have a panel and a review process of the candidates? Okay. so
Yeah,
we-
with help with vetting
No,
questions and
there's a-
stuff too, which is
We have a
perfect.
process.
It's lovely, yes.
Okay, all
Absolutely.
right, so we've got that. Now the question is, do we want to have reps from the community? And I think you were saying maybe 5 is probably on the outside edge, to also give us some feedback. So I need some thoughts on that.
Can I have one more question on that?
Go right ahead.
So the percentage-wise, 10% is very low. And so, but in that 10%, in your opinion, was it useful, or was it just not even all that useful, even for that small number?
I can think of one process in the past that I thought was very useful, very effective, and it was the city of Menlo Park. There they utilized 3 different panels, mixed between community, between staff, and their end of day feedback went reasonably well. Okay, so I have seen instances where that provided great value. I've also seen instances where the value was the fact that the community participated.
And that was it?
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
So Vice Mayor Kendall, what are your thoughts just off the top?
It's tough, right? That's a tough call, right? Is it, and for us, it comes down to how important do we think it is that they got to come in? I guess take the lowest common denominator on that one and assume we're gonna get really not a lot of feedback, but people did get involved. The flip side is that it's hardly any of them are involved, right? And we'll probably face some backlash on that selection process.
There will be backlash regardless.
Exactly, that's what I mean, right? And so I'm like, that's the trade-off. Is that worthwhile or not? And I don't know.
This is kind of pushing the decision down, but you could agree at this point that yes, you'll have a staff interaction process.
Right.
And you can decide at the time you see the candidates, or even at the time you go through your first round, if you wish to have, community involvement, because you still have 2 weeks from the time you do your initial interviews to the follow-up, right?
Right.
So that would be plenty of time to make a decision of, if you choose to do the community panel, make a decision of who, how you choose those panelists and who's involved, and then reach out to them.
Sorry. No, you're good.
I was gonna say, just a question and a comment, if that's okay. Are we just doing questions now?
No, either.
So let me just throw out a question and a comment. So, in the Menlo Park case, how did the process of feedback, like what did the panels ultimately communicate to the council? Like, was it a formal recommendation? Was it just feedback? I assume it wasn't like a formal recommendation, but it was more like feedback and sharing thoughts with the council.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And, okay,
And amazingly, it was done in one meeting, in one room, with everyone present.
yeah,
That is all the panelists, which it worked for them.
okay. So I don't think we're to the point yet of talking about process of how we select the people. I have some thoughts on that, but I think we're still at the point of talking about whether we want to do it. I think it would be a positive. I think personally, if we can figure out a way to make the process work, I think, as you said, sometimes the value is just the value of having the public involved, which I think is hugely important. It doesn't affect the timeline, really. We're already planning for August 2nd to be second day of interviews with at least staff input. So I don't see it pushing our timeline back. And I do think there's a way we could structure the selection process that would be not terribly onerous and would be as fair as it could possibly be. But we could.
Okay. Councilmember Burks?
So one of our strategic goals this year is transparency and inclusion, and we all committed to that. And 10% is a low number, and you've only had one successful. No, I mean, there's been one successful.
Right.
Not to put you on the spot, but I do agree that we should have some type of public panel, and I think we should agree to that tonight. And I think we should also agree to the way we pick the people, because it's summertime, and the more advance notice we give to them,
Right.
And know if they're going to be on vacation or not, the better, because everybody gets out of here in July and August. So.
All right, so we've got two thoughts in that direction. Councilmember Gehringer, where are you? You okay with that?
I'm right there.
All right, good.
And agree that we should develop the process tonight so that we can communicate that out there. Good.
Okay.
Or at least, that we will be deciding this at this time or something, so that we can put people at ease.
Okay, Vice Mayor Kendall?
I'm glad. I think this will be a positive.
Okay.
Be,
All right, so we're good.
Received.
I'm just gonna press a little because it's 7:02 now.
Oh, yeah,
So
you
I
have
know
another
some of
meeting.
y'all have another meeting to go
Right.
to.
Everybody's here.
So
Was it-
There's a
in this
couple
room?
people over there, it's over that room.
it's okay. I'm just gonna try to keep us moving so we can keep going. So, let's say one idea would be each one of us selects a person from the community. That would give us 5.
Mm-hmm.
Would that work?
I think that's great.
Is that your
Councilmember Gehringer?
process?
No, I had a very completely other end of the spectrum process. But
Okay.
I'm completely open.
I'm
To that, yeah.
open to that.
You're open to that. You're open to that.
Yes.
I'm also open.
I'm open to that, but I'm interested in
It-
Councilmember Bliss's.
Yeah.
The city, so that we have broad geographic representation, so that no part of the city feels like they're not being included. and then we would pick them at random. That would be and the reason I'm thinking that, and let me explain the rationale, is just that I think that I'm trying to steer clear of a process where people feel as though it wasn't fair, or that it's the usual suspects, or that it's just a select few that get to have a voice. So it feels, I know it's, kind of unusual, but I do think it would create, to me, it could be perceived as a fair process, if somewhat unconventional. So I'm completely fine with us going the route of picking people. But I think that'd be one of those two. Either we just go with a random selection of people who express interest and volunteer, or we go with, I think any other process.
Which would you prefer of those two?
The random ones.
Okay, random.
But
I know it's open, but I'm trying to get commitments now.
Of course.
Okay, because we're trying to close this,
Yeah,
all right?
yeah.
So, I've got one for the random.
May I ask a question of
Sure.
our paid consultant?
Yes.
What processes have been used, just quick, because we're trying to get to a decision, but what processes do you have familiarity with, that how
Well,
people have been selected?
Primarily that the council would identify and select.
One of our friends.
Right. I think that's a novel approach though, and what it does make it more quote-unquote fair and objective. It does add a little bit of complication because, you're gonna have to do the names and, how big a production does that become? But I like the idea.
Okay. Councilor Garrett, what do you think?
I like it.
Okay, you like it. Vice Mayor Candell?
I have nothing against that. I do like the one per council, given the advice you just gave us on the types of people that we would want in there. You're talking the people, not a rebel, not a radical, not, somebody very thoughtful that you think has maybe expertise in executive searches, right? And so that's what you get. It's not random. But if we're thoughtful in the types of people that we're bringing in are very neutral and with expertise in executive searching, yeah, I'm good with that too.
Okay, but it sounds like you would prefer that.
Yeah, I would.
Okay, that's all I
Yeah.
need to hear. Councilman Brooks?
I prefer
that we pick.
We pick.
We pick, right.
I like Councilmember Bliss's idea. I think from a transparency perspective, I think there is a view towards the council at present that that is not completely positive, and in the transparency perspective, I think doing a random selection, which could be kind of difficult, and the geographic thing could be really difficult. But picking 5 names out of a hat, hopefully we'll get a lot of not names, I think is an extraordinary idea, and I'm all for it.
Okay.
Okay.
So that is how we'll proceed, and we'll need to kind of get details on how we're gonna do this, maybe at a later time, but that's.
As long as you say you can, that's okay with you.
So, well, no, the process was, you mean we'll get details about posting it in when we do
Yeah.
Well, I
communications
mean,
about the
so
process?
I guess we
Yeah,
need to
so the
figure out
mayor,
where-
you can work with.
Where do we
some-
get our pool, I guess is the
Right.
question. Do we take this, people who had the survey? Do we put out a new thing saying, do you want to be in the pool for this?
Right.
That's
Yeah.
part of the process we have to figure out, And then we get the names, and then, of course, they have to sign a non-disclosure agreement,
Right.
which may make some people happy or unhappy, depends. So it's gonna be a bit of a slog. Go ahead.
Could I suggest maybe a subcommittee to work with staff to do that? Councilwoman Bill's leading it, and whoever else wants to volunteer.
You just got
I just,
Words are leaving my mouth.
I was just an idea.
Yeah.
But it's just a subcommittee to work out the details.
I think that's fine. Councilor, was you willing to
Absolutely.
chair that effort? Do you have a preference on who would work with you on that? Just be honest.
From the council?
Well, unless you
I was
go
gonna-
pick someone
I
outside.
was gonna pick someone I ran.
Someone in the city's gonna
Throw
work
our
with
name
you.
in it.
I mean, are there any volunteers? I mean, I'm happy to work with whoever.
I'm happy to work on it, but also I think because that's the connection between some link between the search committee group.
Yeah.
Okay.
But also happy to
No,
have them
I'm
there.
plenty busy right now.
Okay.
I don't need any more stuff. Okay, so,
And then when that comes back to you all.
It shouldn't take
for-
a long time.
Yeah, you can make a recommendation on process, how we're gonna get these individuals, how it's gonna play out, and that will come back to us probably in one of these meetings, I hope, maybe in the first one. That can be then added to the overall picture, and we go from there. Sound good?
Yeah, so
Yes.
with staff, I'm just gonna say maybe we'll try to bring that back to you at your closed session meeting on the
On the 8th?
10?
Oh, we have a lot of time then.
Yeah,
It's
we
the
do.
8th.
To the 8th.
Yeah.
Is that the right? is
July,
that-
yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's the
July
first.
8th,
Yeah,
correct.
that's the
We can
first
have
one.
something.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of time to do it, right. Okay?
Right, and that will give people a month to get in.
Yeah.
Well, not a whole month.
Yeah, but enough.
Enough, enough.
Depending on what you decide to use, it could be the pool of people who were in the survey, it could be a new pool.
Or we could actually potentially bring it back the 24th and it even be their process, but if you wanna give people more time, we'll chat.
Let's, you guys talk, see what works, but we have a couple options, okay?
Okay.
All right. Any final comments or?
One last request that we get authorization to secure a facility, that Tracy can move forward and secure a facility for the 19th and the 2nd.
Okay,
Interview facility.
all right. Is there a place in mind that
Well,
would work? or-
you know, I mean, at the 19th, do you prefer to have, and we can chat offline, but do you prefer to have it not at City Hall? Or does it matter? I mean, because we have rooms, but do you prefer, the candidates prefer not to come to City Hall?
I'll leave that to the council. I mean, we can do it either way.
That's your choice. I know
But-
that sometimes they've done it at hotels, like maybe the room that I could try, maybe the room at the park that you had your
I think the room at the park that
bonding.
we did our training in was fine, and that would work. Now, is there a problem with that or?
Well, I just,
concern?
cost-wise,
It's gonna cost money.
I don't know how much that costs,
I
but
would prefer to use our own facilities and save the money. I mean, we have unfunded mandates and.
is there a confidentiality concern with them just like waiting in the, because the staff will be there and.
Right.
Right, oh, yeah, that's
Maybe
true.
there's
Yeah.
another public facility in the
The library?
community that we could look at.
Or the community center.
Okay,
Or
so
the schools.
can we
I'll work with
authorize
Paul.
staff to go ahead and work on this, come back
Good
with some
idea.
recommendations when you've got
That's
some
good.
ideas in terms of cost and possibilities for the dates, and then we'll make the formal decision then. But we're giving you that direction now to proceed with Paul to kind of figure out what the options might be. Okay? Sound good, Tracy? Councilmember Brooks.
Just to go back to the picking the things, names out of the hat. On the 24th, I'm fine, it's up to the mayor, but I'm fine not being there and involved in that process, I
You don't
think.
want to pick the names out?
We won't pick
Well, I
them on the
think-
24th, we'll just be telling them
Deciding on the
how we're gonna
process.
Yeah, how
advertise
the
and
process
that.
is. I have
Yeah, okay,
full
good.
faith in,
Good.
I mean, the sooner the better. I have full faith in
I think
Teresa and
I
Steve,
think that
so.
might
Good.
give people a long lead time. to-
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
That sounds good. Okay, any other public comments? All right, Paul, thank you so very much for taking the time to come and see us. We really appreciate it. I think we got a lot done, and with
Yes.
that, we're adjourned.